Hi, welcome to the KaiNexus Continuous Improvement Podcast. I'm Mark Graben, a senior advisor with KaiNexus, and today we are chatting again with
Greg Jacobson. I'm the CEO and co-founder of KaiNexus, and I'm loving just how good you sound, Mark. But also you're looking really sharp, sporting the KaiNexus the quarter zip there, and so I'm excited. We have three great topics to get to today, so it's going to be fun.
in addition to the KaiNexus gear. You're wearing the full zip up
Yeah,
as
yeah,
long as we're modeling
yeah.
KaiNexus apparel. um, so yeah, we're going to talk about the Lean Enterprise Institute, Lean Enterprise, or the Lean Transformation Summit.
hmm
It's a partnership with Catalysis. You and a couple Connexians were there, but first we're going to riff on checklists a little bit because I'll let you tell the story, Greg, compared to last time when we did the podcast versus today.
I think that it's a great intersection between the habit loop that
Mm-hmm.
you, if you've heard me at all, I probably mentioned habit science in some
Mm-hmm.
way,
Yeah.
and checklists because last time we did a podcast, I was in Colorado and I just jumped on and didn't go through the normal. We had this webinars checklist that we've
Mm-hmm.
developed over the years and fine tuned, and
Yeah.
it has great things like make sure you got something to drink. Have you gone to the bathroom? Make sure your phone is on do not disturb. And there's, I don't know, let's say 10 or 15 things that are really key for guests, and there's another 10 or 15 things that are really key for hosts. But one of the things that it has on there is to put a sign on the door
Mm-hmm.
that says, "Hey, webinar in progress. Please don't come in." And a nice little Kaizen tweak to that was that we were doing that for a while, and someone still came in,
Yeah.
and so then we decided, oh well, if we put the sign on the handle, that's a great way to error proof it because it's really hard to open a door without realizing there's a sign over the
Well, and
handle.
and and explaining why, right? Because I think at first the first version of the sign said like "Do not enter, do not disturb."
Right.
And I think you'd also added, "Well, here's the reason why."
Exactly. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's interesting. There was actually two
Oh
OIs
yeah.
on the sign, and
And then
and
I don't do that because I'm working alone in a home office, so I don't need to worry about that. So I feel safe skipping that step as opposed to you being at KaiNexus World Headquarters.
right. And so at KaiNexus, I hear people, working in the office. I'm totally geared into, oh, I'm getting on with Mark to do a podcast or with some other podcast, and so I kind of pull that checklist up. It's very easy because I have all the cues
Mm-hmm.
that triggers that. And so we were in Colorado. I was in a hotel room, and I had not. It was just like it was not familiar, and so forgot to do the sign. And it was really a great week because now there's so much that's virtual, and so I was able to work, but I was also able to see my folks and be with my wife and daughter, and so it was kind of the best of all worlds. But there was no sign on the door, so my parents, who weren't there all morning, came in and totally threw me off. And I think we had already finished the podcast potentially, or they came in and didn't say anything. It didn't interrupt anything, but
Yeah,
we ended up
distracted.
riffing later that when you're in a new environment, like I'll just use the ER doctor example. Like one of the reasons why when I was practicing, which I'm exactly at 12 months and not doing a shift at this point. It was
Oh,
March of 2024.
oh wow.
Um, and so that could be a different topic. But I always did not like to work in new ERs because things are different and you don't know where things are and you're out of your
Mm-hmm.
element. And so when you are in a different location, or there's something different about the way you're doing a routine, I think it's really great to be mindful that this is when an error is going to happen,
Right.
and it adds one more hole to the Swiss cheese model, if you will.
Yeah. Well, and so I think it's interesting. You said you forgot to use the checklist as opposed to you chose not to use it. Because I mean, one of those two things could happen. Like when I've
Right.
gotten burned before, where I feel like it's been such a repeatable routine, and I'm like, I'm not going to literally print out or go through on screen, check, 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 check. I don't need to do it. Well, that's when I've been burned and I've forgotten a step. I got like, oh, it was a choice. It was a mistake. It was a bad decision to
Mhm.
say, like, I've done this without mistakes for a while. I don't need the checklist anymore. And that's all the more reason my lesson learned was why you do need the checklist.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point. I mean, checklists are there almost for that reason, because when you have that hypervigilance
Mm-hmm.
and something's new, you're going to really think through all of the individual things. But if you're doing your fifth procedure of the day and
Mm-hmm.
you've done this procedure for 20 years, or you're taking off, you're the pilot on a flight, or you are the I don't know, the shift operator in a mine. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
people in mines do, but there's so many different kind of jobs that either they're error prone, or they're like a huge amount of safeties involved,
Mm-hmm.
and it's in those situations where you do it all the time, where interestingly enough the checklist is what keeps you in the lane and keeps you out of trouble.
So, what would be a good example of a cue to prevent you from forgetting to do the checklist? Like, would it be a cue as I, schedule the time for us to put, Mark Gregg podcast parentheses run checklist?
Yeah, that's I love that. I mean, I think as we've studied habit science more and more here at KaiNexus, we've and by the way, I'll give plugs for three books that have been
Yeah.
really influential to us, with no financial connection here, but um, Clear's book Atomic Habits, Fogg's book Tiny Habits, and Duhigg's book Power of Habits
Yeah.
are, I think, just exceptionally well written, very insightful, and go through as much habit science, I think, as a business person needs.
Hmm.
Well, really not a bit as a human needs,
Sure.
unless you're academically going really deep in the subject. and
Yeah.
and it would say that location and time based things are really great cues. So
Hmm.
something on your calendar to remind you to do something would be the perfect thing in my mind for this.
Yeah.
And so in this case, like we booked this at the top of the hour. Maybe the better thing, as we're riffing on brainstorming better ways to do it, is just booking almost like the first 10 minutes that says run checklist, because when
Hmm.
we're doing like a live webinar, you always book that 15 minutes before.
We join early. Yeah.
Yeah, and we joined 15 minutes early, and that is the cue to, like, oh yeah, we've got to do all this. We got to go through the checklist, but
Yeah.
perhaps that would be a good way for when we're doing these non-live sessions. So
Sure. And today, before we hit record, Greg did go through the checklist. Was there
yeah.
anything that you would have that you almost forgot? Because I mean,
Oh, I mean, yeah.
I'm trying to think. Like,
I
was there?
didn't turn off all the unnecessary applications on my computer. I was reminded about that.
Okay.
The do not disturb on the computer and on the phone. Those were a couple, and I think those were the big things. I verified I had something to drink,
Yeah.
but there's no, for me, we this is not a daily practice, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I do these once or twice a month, and so
Hmm.
like, it's super critical when you're doing it with that kind of interval. I think that the point that you were making, though, is when it's something you do so frequently, that if you forget, if there's no real bad outcome, it's going to get
Yeah.
caught somewhere else. We could have a different conversation about it, but I think in any kind of high stakes situation,
Hmm.
even down to like processing an invoice here at KaiNexus. I mean, that's getting that right is really important. And so we have a checklist process that when we're processing it, and we have a bunch of eyes that go over it and think through and get it right. So
Great.
any books you recommend on checklists if someone's interested in learning more?
The main book that comes to mind is the Checklist Manifesto by Dr. Atul Gawande, a surgeon from Boston. And that book was written not just for a medical audience, but it was written. I mean, he used case examples from aviation, of course, and all sorts of other settings, law firms, and other types of businesses that were using checklists to really good benefit.
Yep.
So it's a
I
quick
will.
read. It's a short book.
Love it. I will say that my wife and I we do an operations meeting to keep the family going on
Uh,
Sundays. We've been doing it now for 10 years. We have no idea how any two people that live in the same household don't do this. But we have a checklist to go through that because there's so many pieces to making sure a household is running and making sure everyone's where they need to be. And so yeah, checklists
yeah,
can be a part of business, but also personal.
yeah.
So we
So
have a lot of topics. Should we
yeah,
switch? Yeah,
let's
perfect.
talk about the Lean Transformation Summit. I didn't make it this year. That's something I've attended, especially when it was a separate Lean Healthcare Transformation Summit. I was attending that a lot. So what I miss out on? Like what was a key highlight for you?
There are a couple key highlights. So one, I haven't been to it in a while. We at KaiNexus we have a presence there every year, but we don't. It's not always the same folks, and so this year I got tapped and was pretty excited
Mhm.
to be there and to see what was going on. So the biggest thing for me, and I'll kind of just put the selfish KaiNexus hat on to answer was like the conversations that I was bumping into, the recognition that having technology to help facilitate lean transformations. When we used to talk about this initially, Mark,
Yeah.
almost 12 15 years ago, whenever we started talking,
Hmm.
um, there always seemed to be a little bit of a standoffish nature
Right.
to it. There was always a little skepticism, and
About technology.
I'm sorry.
About technology and
Yeah,
continuous
about
improvement.
is technology needed? Is it a value add? Is it getting in the way? And now the conversation we were having it was this recognition that technology done in the right way um, just enriches the experience. It decreases the barrier for not only entry but then for sustainment, and it allows process improvement teams to have a bigger impact in their organization. And so that was a lot of fun. The team, I always make a joke, doesn't let me out of my cage very often, and so I don't get to go to these conferences very much. And so maybe that has been going on, in a piecemeal, in incremental way. But for me,
Yeah,
it was
it
this
has.
really profound change in the nature of the conversation. So that was a lot of fun. But the one presentation that I mentioned to you when we were about to get on was by and then keep me honest on the pronunciation, but Zeynep and Ton.
Zeynep
I do.
Ton from
Zeynep Ton. I knew I was going to get it wrong. Yeah.
she's from MIT Sloan School of Management.
And she did a talk that it really seems like it comes out of the book that came out a couple years ago called "The Case for Good Jobs," and
Hmm.
it just really resonated with me. The stories and the idea. There's synergism. You say a lot, Mark, that what people don't realize is that quality increases sometimes, oftentimes, when cost decreases. So like
Hmm.
when you do lean, the cost of delivering the value actually goes down. But in this weird way, the value, the product, the quality actually increases. And
Well,
and I
yeah,
think that was
I
what
would say real quick. I think the difference is that it's a difference between improving how the work is done and reducing waste in that work versus quote unquote cost cutting.
That's great. Yes, thank you for
Different approach. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I think that she is her thesis, and I think it's spot on, is that when you create a company that provides good jobs for people, that provides career paths, that people feel valued not only in their paycheck and their benefits, but also in their ability to influence their work. It actually it just makes good business sense, and
Right.
so she kind of goes through that process and or at least through the data and some of the academic findings that she's had. And so, and she's a really compelling speaker. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. And I've interviewed her a couple of times. So if people want to go to, it was in my Lean blog interviews podcast series. We've talked about the book, and yeah, I agree. She's great. So people can find video of a TED Talk online. I encourage people to go check out what she's writing, and she uses examples from a wide range of industries. A lot of it's a lot of her research is focused on retailers, because retail jobs, there are a huge number of retail jobs in the U.S. in particular. And I remember she points to companies like Costco,
Mm-hmm.
Quick Trip, gas stations and convenience stores, or QT. Like there's a lot of them in the
Mm-hmm.
Dallas area. Do you have them around Austin?
I don't know, but I definitely know of them in the
Yeah.
Dallas area. Yeah.
And these are companies that focus on pay matters, but pay is not everything. So she's talking about what companies are doing around culture and giving people the right level of autonomy, especially to participate in improvement. Standardizing. I think one of the keys, is for retailers is, these great companies sometimes actually have offer less variety to consumers, because then that helps them be operationally efficient. So there are these different themes that come together, and she studies and cites Toyota, as a manufacturer. She's very conversant in the Toyota production system and lean and Kaizen. So that's a big, like there's a big Venn diagram overlap, I think, in what she writes about and what she's sharing, that would really resonate with lean thinkers, and kind of bringing in some different issues that we might not naturally or always talk about in the context of lean management.
Yeah, she does. She focuses on Costco, compares it to Sam's Club,
Mm-hmm.
and then talks about the turnaround at Sam's Club, where they started to think through, like, how could we provide better jobs, and all of a sudden their open positions started to decrease, their and all their metrics started to improve, and so I think it's really compelling, and it's consistent with I think how we hope the world works, right?
Mm-hmm.
These things should be synergistic.
Yeah.
There's no reason that you can't provide a good job and that the company is successful by doing that.
Yeah. A win-win proposition, or even win-win-win if you include the customers, right? So
Hmm.
you've got a better employee experience. People in healthcare talk about this a lot, in language of take care of the providers so they can take care of the patients,
Yeah, right.
and so that the organization ends up winning. So, well, I'm glad you saw her speak, and
Yeah,
it sounded
and
like
the
you had
other
some
thing
great
that happened,
conversations.
yeah, it was great. And the other thing that ended up happening that was a bit of a surprise and really welcome was that Cleveland Clinic, one of
Mhm.
our customers, was
Mhm.
at the conference, and they ended up presenting on how to do continuous improvement in a work environment, in a remote work environment.
Mhm.
And it was just fun because they heavily use KaiNexus, and the conversation and ended up weaving that into it, and so it was a cool surprise that we didn't know they were going to be presenting and showing, and they ended up showing a really cool video of what did the virtual huddle look like,
Mhm.
and so it was on a Zoom or a Zoom like situation. So you saw the people that were virtually connected. They were screen sharing on a KaiNexus and going through their huddle board and moving what they referred to as kaizens. They're
Mhm.
what some places call opportunities for improvement. But the really cool part was they showed that in that process of working. But the really cool part was they then asked some of the people that were involved in the huddle, what does this process like mean to you? And they said, oh, it's so amazing to work at a place that not only cares about what we think, but works to allow us to improve the work that we're
Yeah.
doing. And just it's
Yeah.
just like just tore at my heart, because it was just like, yes, this is exactly why we do this, or at least
Mhm.
that's my purpose, that's my mission. And
Yeah.
I always am drawn to, when I was I hate to say it in the past tense, but when I was an ER doctor, like no one would come to me and say like, hey, what can we do to make you deliver care better, or what do you
Yeah.
need? And that was part of the origin story that I think that was the founding of KaiNexus. But it's a really important part of Lean. Respect for people,
Yeah.
and just saying, hey, you matter, your ideas matter. We don't want you to check your brain at the door. And what can we do to make your work better, your life easier, and provide more meaning in your world? So
Yeah.
it was cool.
That's awesome. That's very cool. Did we have you mentioned a third? It was another
That, that,
topic. I
that
didn't
was
quite.
that was the third, the
That was the
Cleveland
third
Clinic.
topic.
Yeah,
Okay.
there were two really cool things that happened. I mean, it
Yeah.
was a good summit in general. I wanted to pick out a couple highlights. So.
All right. Well, good. Thanks for doing that. See, I didn't create a short-term checklist of the topics we were going to talk through. I didn't think. Well, I didn't need that. We did okay. So, yeah, Greg, thank you for sharing. Reflections on checklists. Thanks for sharing some of your takeaways from last week at the LAI summit. So, encourage people go to lean.org and learn about all the things they're doing, and I'll put some other links in the show notes. So, yeah, Greg, thanks again for doing the episode. I'll let you
Well,
wrap things up.
thank you for hosting, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in person. If you are a KaiNexus customer and have not signed up for KaiNexicon yet,
Yep.
now's your time. It looks like we have broken all the records. We're going to have more
Nice.
attendees at this KaiNexicon than we have ever had. So that's super exciting, and we still have a few spots left. So it's at the end of April. It's in Austin, and it's, aside from being a good time, which I'm all in for a good time, it's a really efficient time to learn more about how you can and get more out of your KaiNexus investment. So
Yeah.
please don't forget to sign up for that.
There we go. Quality and efficiency hand in hand. That happens. Yeah.
I can't. I'm always about how can we make things more efficient. I didn't even realize I did that. So
yeah. So go kainexus.com/kainexicon to learn more about that. So I'm looking forward to it. I will see you there. Greg Tracy O'Rourke, people might know from the Lean or Lean Six Sigma communities, is also doing a keynote talk. So a lot of fun, a lot of learning, a lot of networking to be had. Thanks
looking
again.
forward to it. And so we will end by saying what we usually do, which is, Mark, I will see you next time.
Kai next time.